10 years had passed since the Dursleys found the little baby on their doorstep, and almost nothing had changed on Privet Drive, except for Harry and Dudley Dursley, who had grown up considerably. Harry lived with the Dursleys, yet nothing hinted that another boy besides Dudley had grown up in that house. He was absent from every photo, and moreover, his room was just the cupboard under the stairs. Harry Potter was there, asleep. He was dreaming of a huge flying motorbike, before being abruptly awakened by his Aunt Petunia, who ordered him to come help in the kitchen for Dudley's birthday. The kitchen table was laden with gifts for the occasion, like a new computer, a new television, or a new bicycle. Dudley always got everything he wanted, unlike Harry, who had to wear his cousin's old, oversized clothes. The only thing he liked about himself was the lightning bolt-shaped scar on his forehead. Aunt Petunia had told him that he got the scar in the car crash that killed his parents. During breakfast, Dudley nearly threw a fit over receiving only 37 presents, whereas the previous year he had received 38. Bad parents. Seeing Dudley's mounting anger, Aunt Petunia promised him 2 more gifts later in the day when they went out. At the end of breakfast, the telephone rang and Aunt Petunia received bad news. Mrs. Fig, a neighbor down the street, had broken her leg and wouldn't be able to look after Harry. Each year, on Dudley's birthday, his parents took him and one of his friends out for activities while Harry was left with Mrs. Fig. Though she was kind, Harry hated going there. Her house smelled strongly of cabbage, and she spent her time showing him pictures of her cats. The Dursleys had no choice but to take him along, and 30 minutes later, Harry found himself in the back of the car with Dudley and his best friend, Pierce Polkiss. For the first time in his life, he was going to the zoo, but Uncle Vernon took him aside to warn him that he wouldn't come out of his cupboard until Christmas if anything strange happened. Harry assured him he wouldn't do anything, though his uncle didn't really believe him. Indeed, no one ever believed him. Truth be told, strange things often happened around him in the past, like his messy hair growing back too quickly. One day, his aunt had enough, she had almost shaved his head, and the next day, his hair had grown back just as it had been before. Another time, she tried to make him wear an awful old sweater of Dudley's. The more she tried to pull it over his head, the smaller it got until it was teeny. And another day, while being chased by Dudley's gang, Harry had tried to jump behind the bins and ended up on the roof on the school kitchens. He had gotten in big trouble from both the school and the Dursleys. But this time, he thought everything would be fine in the car on the way to the zoo. When Mr. Dursley drove, he enjoyed complaining about everything and anything. That morning, he was ranting about motorcyclists, and just after that, Harry made the mistake of saying he dreamed of a flying motorbike. Uncle Vernon nearly crashed into the car in front due to his anger. He turned around and shouted that motorbikes don't fly. When they arrived at the zoo, the morning went quite well for Harry. He tried to stay a bit away to enjoy his moments, while trying not to compare certain animals to Dudley. After lunch, they headed to the reptile house. The place was filled with reptiles. Dudley and Pierce wanted to see the largest of the snakes. They eventually found it, but it was in no mood to do anything since it was sleeping. Dudley ordered his father to make it move, and Uncle Vernon quickly tapped on the glass. The snake didn't budge, and the Dursley family gave up on Harry with the snake. Harry observed the snake still sleeping. He felt a sense of compassion for it. He understood it. Harry too was locked up like it, waiting for Aunt Petunia to come knock and wake him up. But at least he could move around the house. Suddenly, the snake woke up, and slowly it lifted its head until it was at Harry's eye level, then winked at him. Making sure no one was looking, and Harry winked back. The snake nodded towards the Dursley family, then looked up at the ceiling. Harry seemed to understand. I get that all the time. Harry started talking to him. He told it he understood how it felt. Then he asked where it came from, and the snake pointed to a sign nearby that read, Brazil, the specimen was bred in the zoo. Like him, the snake also never knew its true home. A moment later, Dudley's friend Pierce shouted from the vivarium, calling the Dursleys to come see the snake. Dudley punched Harry in the ribs to make him move. Caught off guard, Harry ended up on the ground, and suddenly, as Dudley and Pierce stood side by side in front of the snake, the glass separating them disappeared, and the two boys jumped back, screaming in horror. As visitors panicked, the snake left its enclosure and slithered next to Harry. It thanked him before leaving for Brazil. After that, the zoo director himself came to apologize, and the Dursleys, Pierce and Harry returned to the car to go home. During the ride, Dudley recounted that the snake had almost bitten his leg, and Pierce claimed it had tried to strangle him by wrapping around him, even though the snake had not harmed them. But the worst was when they arrived back at Privet Drive. Pierce said he had seen Harry talking to the snake. Uncle Vernon was so angry that he ordered Harry to go to his cupboard without eating and forbade him from coming out until further notice. Harry had spent 10 years with the Dursleys since his parents were killed in a car crash. He didn't remember the accident. The only memory he had was a flash of green light followed by a painful burn on his forehead, probably the impact of the car crash. Harry had no memories of his parents, and the Dursleys refused to talk about them. They didn't even have a photo. During the hours spent in that cupboard, Harry often imagined someone coming to pick him up, but the Dursleys were his only family. He didn't know anyone else and had no friends. Yet sometimes, he felt like people on the street recognized him, people wearing strange clothes. Some even shook his hand before disappearing.